Digital coaching is absolutely exploding. In the corporate world, these platforms that promise to develop your leaders at scale, well, they're everywhere you look. They offer this simple, slick, tech-driven solution to what is a really complex human challenge. But what if that simplicity is actually hiding some pretty serious risks? It really forces us to ask a crucial question. So this is the question, isn't it? If you're a business leader or an HR professional and you're investing heavily in these tools, you've got to know, are you actually getting real transformation, or are you just getting a lot of activity on a dashboard? All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at why these platforms are so darn appealing in the first place. Then we're going to break down the risks for the company itself, for the HR team sponsoring them, and even for the employees being coached. And finally, we'll connect all the dots to show you the systemic problem that's really at the heart of it all.
I mean, the sales pitch is pretty powerful, right? Speed, simplicity, and scalability. The promise that you can roll out high-quality coaching to hundreds, maybe even thousands of your employees with just a few clicks. It's a really seductive promise for any modern company. But let's peek behind the curtain. And that brings us to our first major area of risk. The one that really hits the organization's bottom line and its big strategic goals. When you sign that contract, it is so worth asking who the platform's model is truly designed to benefit. So here's something you might not realize, a kind of hidden economic reality. The best, most experienced executive coaches, a lot of them just can't afford to work for these platforms. The fees are too low, their autonomy is gone. So who's left? Well, often it's coaches who are just starting out. And here's the kicker. Your company is paying a premium, but you might be getting mid-level delivery in return. And check this out. This chart really tells the story of where your money actually goes. A shockingly small slice of your investment, maybe a quarter of it, goes to the actual coach. And the rest? Well, it's propping up the platform's software, its sales team, and of course, its profit margins. You're not just buying coaching, you're funding a tech company's overhead. It's not a capital-efficient investment, it's a huge middleman tax disguised as convenience. Oh, and the platforms love to show you these beautiful dashboards, right? They're filled with activity metrics, hours used, sessions completed, all these 5-star ratings. But you gotta be careful, because this is a classic trap. Activity is not impact. What really matters, actual behavioral change, lower turnover, true leadership growth, that stuff is rarely measured. So please, don't renew a contract just because the dashboard looks pretty. Demand proof of real impact. And for your senior leaders, this is a massive risk. Think about it. A platform coach is juggling multiple companies working from a standardized playbook. They don't get your unique company culture, your internal politics, or your specific strategic challenges. So the coaching, while it might be technically correct, ends up being strategically thin. It just doesn't have the bite it needs. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the risks for the HR professionals, the people who actually champion these programs. A great way to think about this is like an iceberg. You've got what you see on the surface, and then you have the much larger, much more dangerous part hidden just below. So above the water, everything looks fantastic. It's fast to deploy, it seems to scale infinitely, and wow, does it take a huge administrative burden off your plate. These are the shiny benefits that get these platforms in the door. They solve immediate, visible problems for really busy HR teams. But here's what's lurking right beneath the surface. You risk losing strategic control over your company's own leadership philosophy. The platform's generic approach might not align with your specific culture at all. And suddenly, you're in this world of murky data ethics and a very real reduction in the human depth that makes coaching so transformative in the first place. And this is a really critical point because it actually changes the very nature of HR's role. Instead of being the strategic architect of talent, designing the why and how of leadership development, the role can get boiled down to just a tactical contract manager. You're no longer shaping cultural intent, you're just managing subscriptions and accepting someone else's one-size-fits-all framework. And then there's the data. And man, these platforms collect a massive amount of it. Now, it's always presented as these helpful developmental analytics, but there is such a fine line. If employees even suspect that their private coaching conversations are somehow feeding into a performance monitoring system, well, the psychological safety that's absolutely essential for honest reflection is completely destroyed. So now, let's shift our focus to the most important person in this whole equation, the employee, the executive, the person who's actually receiving the coaching. Because the way these platforms are structured has a very, very real human cost.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Real growth is uncomfortable. It requires tough, challenging conversations. It requires friction. But when coaches are constantly being evaluated with a 5-star rating system, kind of like a rideshare driver, they have a huge incentive to just keep the client happy, to be liked. And this tyranny of the 5-star rating can make them shy away from the difficult, necessary conversations where all the real growth actually happens. You know, there's this fantastic metaphor for this problem, the Uberization of chemistry. It just captures it perfectly. Deep, transformative coaching is all about a strong, continuous relationship that's built on trust. But the platform logic, with its easy switching and short-term focus, it turns this profound process into a simple transaction. You just can't swipe your way to deep self-awareness. So after seeing all these risks for the organization, for HR, for the coachee, you might be thinking, okay, these are just some flaws that can be fixed. But the reality is a bit more stark. What if I told you these aren't bugs in the system? They're actually features of its fundamental economic design. Let's just walk through this loop because it's the engine that drives the whole problem. It starts here, platforms compete on price, which forces them to pay coaches less. So the best coaches leave. That means the overall quality of coaching drops, which leads to low impact. Then the company sees poor results and feels like they overpaid, which puts even more pressure on the platform to lower its fees, and boom, the cycle starts all over again, just spiraling downward. So really, this slide boils it all down to the core conflict. Effective coaching is built on what you could call relational capital. It needs context, depth, continuity, and trust. But these platforms, they're transactional infrastructures. They're built and optimized for something entirely different: scale, standardization, and extracting profit margins. It's a fundamental mismatch of purpose. And that brings us right back to where we started, with a final question for you to take away. Look at your coaching program, look at the platform you're using, and ask yourself honestly, is its underlying design truly optimized for the deep human work of transformation? Or is it optimized for the simple, scalable, and profitable world of the transaction? The answer to that question has profound implications for the future of your leaders.